So Bronagh, you're very busy. You're on the AI Advisory Council. You are the chair of the CeADAR, which is the industry steering group on data, analytics, artificial intelligence. And I was a huge amount of experience yourself working for Primark and Deutsche Bank and FTI Consulting, and data analytics was your thing, which has now become AI, seemingly. But maybe, first of all, I think we have a Slido on this, so we might throw this up, which is, does AI currently have an impact in your entity's financial reporting function? So I think that's, you've a few different options to go with there. So I suppose, while you're throwing that up, maybe you can start with why AI, should be a top priority for many businesses at this point.
Sure, thank you, and pleasure to be here this morning. And thank you for your time. Looking forward to talking about AI today. So I guess in today's rapidly evolving business landscape, as we all know, AI is no longer just a technological innovation. It really is a strategic imperative for businesses today and going forward. Organizations, as we know, are increasingly using AI across every part of their organization, either to increase efficiency, productivity, effectiveness, decrease costs, manage risks, but really to drive competitive advantage, depending on what their key goal and objective is. To balance this, I guess, then, while AI has tremendous advantages and upsides, in terms of audit committees, audit committees then need to, as well as understand the benefits and the potentials, really think about what risks need to be managed to enable artificial intelligence really to thrive in an environment that aligns with a business's strategic goals and also the risk appetite as well. So I know we'll talk maybe a little bit more detail about potential risks, but they range from data, you just mentioned there in that previous discussion, so there's a lot required there: privacy, security, bias, explainability, and even moving into reputation and financial risk. But certainly there's a lot of work that can be done in advance and proactively to ensure that those risks are appropriately managed, considered, monitored, and really allowing AI to thrive in terms of delivering the benefits that each organisation sets out to achieve. Okay.
It sounds like more work for the Audit Committee, I think.
Yeah.
But maybe, Simon, if we could throw up the Slido results there. So in terms of impact on financial reporting function, no current impact, but we have projects underway that will make an impact in 2025. That's up at 39%. So that's nearly 2 in 5 of all the businesses that are represented here are doing something for next year. And then further, well, it's changing, but between the two, it's practically 3/4 are looking at that. And then there's a further 16% for whom it's already had an impact. So, you're talking about 1 in 10 who don't think AI are going to have an impact on the financial reporting function. So there you go. You need to listen.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the challenges that people have when they are trying to figure out what to do next is literally around terms and definitions. And I talked about data analytics, and now we're talking about AI. But you have AI, and then you have generative AI. So maybe just for those of us who are still struggling with this a little bit, you want to explain some of those a bit more detail?
Absolutely. And I think that's really interesting in terms of the feedback as well. And AI literacy in and of itself is a really important topic in, for example, upcoming EU AI Act and regulations, but also for organisations to understand how they can capitalise on this space to best advantage. Essentially, though, artificial intelligence and generative AI that most of us will have heard about in the last couple of years as well are really subsets of computer science, but they differ in their specific applications and their capabilities as well. So AI, in terms of general sense, is a branch of computer science that's dedicated to creating machines that are capable of intelligent behaviour. So that's the real high-level concept there. And ultimately, it's the science of designing smart algorithms and platforms that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. So when we think of things like this, we might talk about automating repetitive tasks, maybe data entry, customer support. We're all used to chatbots potentially at the moment as well, or predictive analytics for decision making. Sales forecasting is quite a well-known topic, or fraud detection as well. And we can maybe talk about a few of those applications in a little while. But essentially, that's the concept of artificial intelligence at the highest level. When you come to look at generative AI, and I know most of us will have heard these terms over the last couple of years with OpenAI, ChatGPT, really they're a subset of artificial intelligence. And the goal there is to create new content, whether it's audio, text, visuals, new code, using a vast amount of data from the internet, for example. And we may hear of LLMs, large language models, and really we're using that data to enable the models to create new content. So where might we use these type of models? You're looking at maybe creating new content in terms of marketing copy. You want to create a new article for your website. Product descriptions are a really good example of where it's been able to be used in various organizations. And also maybe personalized marketing, so you can create custom ads, generate emails based on user data. And also developing software, you might use it to create new code, or debugging code is a really useful opportunity for generative AI as well.
It sounds like replacing a lot of people.
That's always an interesting question as well. And actually what it is should be used for is to augment and automate, for example, and use that in conjunction with human knowledge as well, for sure. And I think over time, there's going to be a lot more roles that are going to be created as a result of artificial intelligence. And maybe audit is one really good example, actually, of where we need to create audit process to understand what AI is being used for, how it's been deployed, what decisions are going to be made. Another good example is an AI ethicist. So bias and discrimination are really important. Ethics are really important when you're creating AI models to ensure it aligns with company policy, company values, company mission, and really what it'll enable you to do. For example, a really good example is if you use chatbots. So what is happening there is that the chatbot is automating, for example, frequently asked questions. It enables 24/7 support, and it's freeing up people to really tackle the difficult support questions, perhaps, as well. So really, it's about augmenting and freeing up time in people's roles to do more value add.
Okay, I know you mentioned ethics. I want to come back to that, but
yeah,
maybe making it sort of specifically relevant for the people here and online. So, you talked about data entry. You talked about other areas which really seem to map on to accounting, to finance and control, those sorts of things. So, any specific things that you're seeing there, any specific areas where AI can make a difference? Or?
For sure, and I guess AI has really become increasingly prevalent in finance and control functions. And actually, a lot of the conversation you're having this morning, I can see a lot of opportunity there to support. And it's looking at reshaping how businesses operates in several key areas. And adoption, I think, is driven by the need for efficiency, accuracy, and timely decision making as well. And the other element there we talk about is handling the vast amounts of data. And certainly I'm sure that came up in conversation this morning as well. So really it's prevalent in areas that benefit from automation, real-time insight in your decision-making capabilities, and predictive analytics capabilities are really useful as well. So maybe I'll talk about a couple of examples that you may know of and are prevalent in industry, and maybe some that are growing as well. So we talked about customer service AI chatbots. I think chatbots, that's a really prevalent one in the likes of banking and retail organizations. And that really reduces service costs. It frees up people's times, it increases response times, and it increases service availability. So that's a really well-utilized opportunity. Another area that's quite prevalent in organizations is fraud detection and risk management. So we see that AI is extensively used for identifying and analysing patterns, identifying anomalies in transactions, and really highlighting opportunities that there may be fraudulent activity for further investigation. Why that's prevalent as well is that financial institutions, for example, handle, as you know, millions of transactions, not only daily and hourly, but minute by minute. And it's impossible, I suppose, for humans alone to identify those potentially fraudulent transactions. So that's a really good example of where that's being used as well. Another really, really beneficial area is predictive analytics for financial planning. That's growing rapidly, especially in larger enterprises as well. So AI-driven predictive analytics helps organizations perhaps forecast financial performance. It helps identify budgeting needs and also looks at potential return on investment. You can also carry out scenario analysis when you have certain predictive analytics and actually understand, okay, well, how might I adapt my decision-making based on the potential forecasts that I see. So that's a really interesting and beneficial way to manage forecasting and financial planning. It's also critical in volatile markets, and it allows companies to adapt and dynamically in response to market changes as well. And maybe two more areas I think that we see increasing rapidly are around automated financial analysis and planning. We all know that there can be a lot of manual intervention and a lot of manual work when you're coming to creating financial reports. So we see AI being used more increasingly in reporting, variance analysis, and maybe again the creation of financial forecasts as well. So we use tools like NLP to generate insights from financial statements. That saves time, reduces human error, and that frees up people to work on more value-add activities as well. So automation is a really clear choice for artificial intelligence.
Okay, and if we think about some of the things we've heard about today, I mean, we've talked about forward-looking statements in the context of CSRD. We've talked about sensitivity, analysis, and judgment and decision-making in terms of our corporate reporting supervision issues that come up there. So all of this seems to be able to play a role there.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you, it all sounds shiny and happy, but I mean, clearly there are risks that come with this. I mean, if you were to set out, what do you think some of the key risks are?
I think there are quite a number, and we'll maybe talk about a few of them. And actually, again, touching on a conversation just in the previous panel, and I'm sure earlier, governance and accountability is really important here. So I guess lack of clear roles in AI management can cause governance issues. So to give one example, earlier this year there was a report, I think by Microsoft, that identified 27% of shadow AI across some companies. I'm sure that's decreased significantly since then. But essentially it's really important to understand what AI has been used in your organisation, how it's being used, who's been using it, and really who are the decision makers within that as well. So that's a risk that needs to be managed.
Sorry, is it 27% of shadow AI?
Yeah. So shadow AI could be, and it would make sense when, for example, OpenAI had released an open version of ChatGPT. Everyone can use and play around with ChatGPT. You really want to make sure, though, that you've got appropriate policies in place that enable your business users to know how you can use these tools, when to use them, what information can be input into them, and also what not to put into them as well. So I guess that would lean towards needing audit committees to, one, develop an enterprise-wide governance AI framework so you know what's happening across your organisation, but also implement a risk assessment or an AI assessment to understand what is being used across your organisation, what your AI applications, how they're classified. In the EU AI Act, we have unacceptable risk, you've got high risk, limited risk, and minimal risk. So you need to understand what people are using and what they're using AI for as well.
Okay.
So that's one risk. There is a risk around data quality and data governance. You mentioned that earlier as well. You need to have really strong data quality processes in place to make sure your data is appropriate for AI systems to use as well. One example of that and a risk that could result from that is model bias and discrimination. So if you have bias in your data sets going into your AI models, you're ultimately going to get that as a result of your AI output as well. So that's one risk that needs to be managed. And bias detection and mitigation process should be put in place to enable that to be addressed and implement fairness controls as well. Data privacy and security is an obvious one as well, making sure that sensitive data is handled appropriately, decrease the risk of breaches, and I know that's standard across other technological innovations as well. Something specific to AI could be another risk to manage is transparency and explainability. So where you develop complex AI models that could be difficult to interpret in some cases. So audit committees really need to focus on ensuring that AI is developed in a transparent way so that it's trustworthy and explainable, especially in high-risk decision-making processes like hiring or healthcare. You need to be able to explain your decision-making processes to your customers, your colleagues, your shareholders, for example. One of the other areas to look at in terms of risk could be around operational risks. So you really need to understand, again, what AI is in place, but make sure it's constantly monitored and controlled so it's not becoming out of date, for example, as your data changes or evolves. So really need to ensure that there's continuous monitoring and that updates are applied as they're needed as well. Other risks, I suppose, as a result of that, ethical considerations. If there's a controversial decision that the AI has created, you need to ensure you've got human oversight to make sure that the decision is ethical and, again, it abides by company values, mission, vision, etc. And then there's other elements that we're potentially used to. Financial risk, if you don't get the return on investment that you wanted to set out to achieve. Again, you need to have constant monitoring and assessment all the way along. Reputational risk is an example. And they're very clear and well-defined risks that you can set out at the beginning to ensure that you can manage these appropriately. Another good example, and one that I would be very passionate about as well, it came up earlier, is talent and skills. It's really important that in businesses you have both the internal capability, but also, where needed, external capability to support your internal resources. This is a really fast and evolving area, and AI has been around for quite a long time, as you mentioned. Data science, it's been called data mining, statistics way back when, and we are seeing new innovations all the time, like ChatGPT. So you need to ensure that your data literacy is really up to speed, and that people understand, right from the C-suite down to users and people who are implementing it, they know how you can use AI, when you use it, if there's any issues with ethics, fairness, etc. But also that you've got the right skills to both develop, deploy, and keep it maintained as well.
Okay. I mean, just in terms of transparency and explainability, that's going to resonate with all the auditors in the room, I would have thought as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned audit committees there, and at some point AI just has to be a business risk that needs to be managed, but not just as a risk, but also, I mean, you've talked about it, all the opportunities that are there as well. So, how do audit committees approach that task of managing it, knowing that they don't eliminate it, but putting it in a place where it becomes an opportunity? That's
it. I think it's all about proactive management, and also, as one of the earlier panelists mentioned, there's a real increase in literacy and really getting up to speed on what artificial intelligence is and how it can really align with your strategic goals. So I think it's really important to be proactive, to understand the space and understand how it's applicable to your specific area. So one is establish a comprehensive AI governance framework, like we mentioned, identify the roles, responsibilities, and ensure it aligns with business goals. Do conduct that AI risk assessment, as we mentioned, include your risk classification, look at scenario analysis, and what mitigation strategies might you need to put in place as well. So where might you need to involve human oversight and constantly all the way, as well as the AI automation as well. Data quality and data governance, I know we're not going to overplay that one, but it's so important to ensure that you have proper data governance policies and assess data quality. Really important to get the foundations right. And then address any bias or ethical concerns that you have. And sure, all of this can be done proactively up front as well to make sure that the benefits can be realised. Regulation and compliance is so important. EU AI Act is coming up, GDPR is there, you've got CSRD. It's really important to stay on top of all of the regulation and carry out third-party audits as well to make sure that that's all good. Promote cybersecurity, AI system resilience. Again, make sure that you strengthen protocols, incident response, build system resilience. I know, again, that standard, well-trodden path for technological innovations. And another really important one we touched on as well is integrate human oversight and accountability. I think that's really important. That audit committees really do ensure that there's a balance between AI automation and human oversight where needed, especially in high-risk areas when you're making decisions, say, for example, in hiring or healthcare in different areas as well. And there's lots of different ways you can do that and proactively identify in advance to make sure that that's properly managed.
Very good.
Yeah.
You can start thinking about your questions now, because I'm going to open it up shortly, and obviously people can ask on Slido as well. A couple of times there you mentioned AI regulatory compliance and all of the things that are happening there. Any sort of couple of key things that people should be thinking about in terms of AI Act, which is probably all some people know that there is an AI Act?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, again, another area for sure to get up to speed on. I suppose key aspects of the Act itself include the risk-based classification. So AI systems will be categorised into 4 risk levels. So there's an unacceptable risk, which is banned AI, like social scoring. You have then high risk, where there's really strict regulations for, say, healthcare and employment applications. And then there's limited risk, and that's where you need transparency requirements like chatbots that we're aware of, and then minimal risk. So that's where there's few or no restrictions. There's also compliance requirements around data governance, we've mentioned, transparency as well, human oversight, accuracy, and also data literacy is being called out there. And then transparency obligations. So users must be informed when they're interacting with AI, ensuring awareness of AI's involvement. And then there are enforcement penalties that can be applied if they, like every other regulation as well. So it's important to be aware of what they are.
And as an AI regulator, is
there's a lot of work happening in the EU as well, and similarly in each individual country as well.
Okay.
So there's an awful lot of work happening around regulation. Again, this is all really important and really beneficial to ensure that you can really capitalise on the benefits that we talked about from AI as well.
Okay. My last question before I throw it open to the room and to people online is just, you talked a couple of times there about integrating human oversight and accountability.
Yeah.
So again, any sort of pointers or suggestions about the best way to do
Yeah,
that?
for sure. And again, this is one that I'm really enthused about, and I've seen this work really well in the past. So there are a couple of different approaches that you can have around bringing humans. There's a human in the loop, I guess. There's certain high-risk classifications where you want to make sure that you've got a human that understands the area, the application, and they understand the decisions being made on appropriate data, and the decisions being made are also right in accordance with their knowledge of the industry. So that's one. Roles and responsibilities are another. Who's responsible for decision making? If there are any errors, who's responsible for updating those? And who's responsible for making sure that the AI models are continually updated and accurate as well? So there's a couple of key places where you can have and ensure that humans are always there, making sure that the outputs are appropriate, they're effective, they're accurate, and they're providing the right next step for your business.
Okay, plenty of work.
Okay. And exciting too.
Yeah, exciting. No, absolutely, a huge opportunity. So kind of open it up to anyone in the room. We have a few questions on Slido, but any questions in the room for Bronagh around the use of AI, either within the finance control function or more broadly? Okay, but there is one which has come in on Slido. There's a couple actually that come in on Slido. If you had to recommend one area where a finance function can or should invest in and implement AI, what would it be?
I think there's a couple of areas. I think automation is key, and it's a low-hanging fruit. For example, RPA is a really good example, robotic process automation for really automatable process that could be effectively and efficiently created. And I do see that happening quite a lot, is identify where you can automate, where people are using a lot of manual effort. In some cases, you will find individuals perhaps taking many hours or days to create a report, whereas you could automate that really effectively using tools, technology, and methodology. What might help as well in certain instances is to create both processes in parallel, so you can understand that you're really getting the same output that you would using the manual process, and in some cases maybe picking up some efficiencies along the way as well.
And so you'd run them in parallel for a while?
You do in some places, yeah. If there's if you really want to increase trust and transparency, that has happened in the past, where you can run both in parallel to make sure you're getting the same output, especially in really important financial outputs that you want to make sure that there's no issues with. So you can do that to make sure that that happens, but certainly that's a well-trodden path already.
Okay, very good. Yes, we have a middle of the room here.
Bronagh, thanks very much for sharing your expertise with us today. I have to confess that I suffer from a serious illness, and it's called cynicism. Mm-hmm. And I would just question, Bronagh, whether we're scared enough about this tool. Mm. And what's coming to my mind is the biggest abuse of legalities in the UK, which is the post office scandal. And that originated because a computer, the IT Horizon system, was flawed, and 900 postmasters got prosecuted by the state on the back of that. And I'm kind of saying this AI is even massively, massively more powerful than the Horizon IT system. And I'm just wondering, even though, Bronagh, you did say we need checks and balances, governance and all the rest, but I just wonder whether the AI machine is just going to be completely out of control, unaccountable, and that we have another 900 postmasters or whatever suffering because of it. So I'm kind of scared.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and really good to be able to talk about that openly as well. And I think absolutely the focus of today, ensuring that audit committees are really clear and proactive in identifying the risks and they're managed well in advance. And I guess that's one of the reasons why we have regulation upcoming in terms of the EU AI Act, which is one of the toughest regulations coming up to ensure that challenges like that don't appear again, and that there is really tight controls and regulation in place to ensure that there are no unintended consequences resulting from AI. The other element I would say is AI in and of itself, apart from generative AI that has, there's a lot more discussion in the last couple of years. Certainly this is an area of expertise that has been there for many, many, many years and has been delivering really beneficial advantages when managed appropriately with the right skill sets, with the right level of regulation and with the right level of accountability. So you absolutely are right in identifying challenges, and that's for sure where we should proactively manage so that there aren't any challenges like that in the future. And it's definitely, I completely agree, we need to balance to get the benefit for the future.
Okay, thank you. Question over here.
Just a question on the impact on sort of people development and training. Like,
Yeah.
to give an example, I can, for CSRD today,
Yeah.
generate a bank of impact risks and opportunities by just chucking it straight into ChatGPT, and I don't need to do all the fundamental research of looking at, landscape analysis and all of that. But what that means then is that our people aren't learning about, they're not building those skill sets around thinking about what is the information I'm using, what's there. They just get an answer and they move straight to the answer. What can we do around that piece of, I suppose, building competence and experience for particularly people starting in their career?
Yeah, I think that's the great question, and I'll refer back to a previous role where I implemented a large-scale data literacy training program. How we delivered that was we created a graduated learning pathway, and we brought in key champions from across the business, right from every level across the business. So you would start out with a certain level that focuses on how it pertains to your role. So for example, if you're going to be automating an Excel process, for example, you're going to learn how to use technical capabilities. Then you may move on to the management level, and really the goal there is to understand how you're going to manage people who are utilising these tools. What are the strategic objectives that you're going to align your AI methodologies with? How will you use it? When will you use it? What do you need to look out for ethics-wise, bias-wise? Data governance is a really core topic. Data quality is a core topic. So you're making sure that you're aligning your learning levels with the individuals in terms of how they're going to be using it, whether they're technical, whether they're management, or whether then if you move into more senior leadership levels as well, then we talk about the strategic imperatives. So how as a business do you want to align AI with your strategic goals and objectives, like your CSRDs, like your ESG, and how you might use this in a specific way to make sure you're getting best advantage. You may then have specific learning pathways for audit committee, compliance, for legal. It's really important actually that every area of the business are involved and upskilled in AI literacy, data literacy being just as important as AI literacy as well. Another area that we partnered with was people and culture and learning and development, because they helped us then roll out a digital literacy training pathway that complemented in-person training to make sure that you're constantly learning, evolving and adapting. Another good way that we see this working is that you're earning badges as you move along, and you're really increasing your level, and you're constantly getting an update in terms of new innovations, new techniques, new methodologies. We saw a huge want and a need for that training. Actually, we were oversubscribed 4 to 5 times. So certainly there's a huge appetite out there to understand what the benefits are, to this lady's question as well, what the risks and challenges are, and how you're going to manage that appropriately within your organisation.
Okay, I'm going to take 2 questions together that came in on Slido, obviously, but time for maybe one more after that. So it's what supports and resources are available for an entity wishing to draft an AI governance framework? And then are there any useful resources or publications for audit committees who are considering AI as a business risk? So the supports and resources that are out there?
I know supports and resources, there's certainly a lot of resource there available and growing as well. I think in internal audit committees, compliance functions and legal functions are the key area that will collate and develop policies, procedures and frameworks. And certainly there's definitely a place for third-party assessment and support that can help you prepare for the upcoming need for that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know, again, if the answer to this is I don't know, that's fine, but I know you're on the AI Advisory Council, part of the Department of Enterprise. I mean, are they thinking about that sort of area of knowing businesses are going to be looking for supports in this area?
That's a great question. And the AI Advisory Council set up this year. There's 3 roles for the council. One is to respond to government in respect of questions they have for artificial intelligence policy or queries. The second, which leans into your question, is around the creation of a work plan of advice and creation of papers to provide back to the government in terms of advice and recommendation. And the third is around demystification of AI. So it's really that second portion there that the council in and of itself have identified key areas that will feed back to the government around advice and recommendations. I myself am leading a paper entitled The AI Ecosystem, and that covers everything from that we talked about today, from data, from strategy, from technology to implementation. And certainly that's one area that's identified as part of the ecosystem that should be addressed for sure.
Okay. I think we could go on all day, but we will stop. Everybody please give a round of applause for Bronagh. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this morning's session. We did have a Slido at the very beginning. I think it was what you're going to hope to hear from today. So I don't know if Simon, you can throw that up while we're talking here. If you can, that would be great. As I also said at the start, we will be circulating the slides, so you're all going to get a chance to have a look at those. Also, we'll be circulating a survey, so to get your feedback in relation to how you thought this morning went, what works, what could work better. It's a hybrid event, so we're as interested in the people's views in the room as well as the people online to make sure that structure works for everybody. So what were people looking for? Sorry, Simon, I was just about to look at that and you pulled it down, but I saw insight, audit updates, CSRD in practice, knowledge, insight on emerging areas, insight on hot topics. I hope we provided a sense of that from everybody who we had this morning, starting with Marguerite and Ellerina from Kerry Group, who really talked about, in fairness, an organisation that was already on that journey, but you know the work that they've had to put in to try and integrate into what they are already doing, the new demands in relation to CSRD. Also, Orla, I think, who really gave a sense of enthusiasm, which I think is definitely needed in relation to CSRD, but it is continuing to develop as an issue. Looking at things like sector-specific standards, looking at standards that are being developed for the SME sector, they're actually supposed to be there to help. And I don't think that's necessarily fully understood. They're just viewed as more standards, but I think there was great stuff that came from that as well. Barry and Morris then gave you an insight into how IAASA are going to respond to the challenge of regulating CSRD, as well as giving their usual sort of broad overview of the regulatory work that we do. I think that the panel then, definitely in terms of what we're doing right now to try and deal with CSRD, both in wave 1 and in wave 2, but hearing it from the audit committee chair point of view specifically, and then from the audit partner point of view, who are dealing with a wide swathe of these. And I think there was a huge amount to learn from that as well. And then finally, obviously, Bronagh in relation to AI, which is probably the next set of acronyms and libraries that are all going to be sent out in the near future once you've got to grips with CSRD. So there was a huge amount there. So all that there is for me to do now is to thank all of you. I want to thank my team, who as usual put in a huge amount of work to make all this run smoothly. I'd like to thank our IT support, who've been brilliant over the last couple of days in helping us set up. But as I've said, I really want to thank all of you for coming along, for participating both here and online. We hope this is really useful for you. It is very useful for us as well. So please respond to the survey, have a look at the slides. Anything you want to talk to us about making it better for next year, we're happy to hear. But in the meantime, thank you very much and have a good day. Thank you.